Welcome to UMCOR's Early Response Team Site Assessment Training. UMCOR's Basic Early Response Team, or ERT training, is a comprehensive course for working with survivors to help prevent further damage to their homes and property. Upon completion of the basic class, attendees are issued an ERT badge and are prepared to assist in the field. You should have completed that course prior to beginning this training. Many of our ERT volunteers seek additional training in order to further develop their skills and knowledge. The purpose of the ERT 200 series of classes is to provide trained early response team members with supplementary tools and technical information in order to strengthen their capacity for safe and effective disaster response as caring members of the community of faith. Participants in this site assessment class, ERT 200SA, will learn how to assess the physical damage to disaster-affected residences in order to plan and prepare for early response teams to safely access and protect the property from further damage. Participants will learn how to determine the need for and ability for ERTs to assist the survivors, as well as to look for structural problems that impact ERT safety and effectiveness. The class will help identify tools useful for damage assessment, and as always, how to sensitively and respectfully discuss the needs with the homeowners.
This class should take approximately 30 minutes to complete. This material should follow the accompanying manual. The manual should also be a helpful resource for you when you are actually doing assessments. There are many ways this information can be used. For example, a conference, district, cluster, or church can train numerous people in site assessment, thereby creating specialized teams of ERT assessors that can be deployed as needed on short notice. As the conference or district coordinator, you might one day find yourself in a position to need ERTs in your area. This class would help you prepare to deploy them. As an on-site manager or volunteer coordinator in your community, this information can help you get set up and ready for teams. As a team logistics person, although it would be best to have assessment done before a team deploys, the reality is that many teams have to assess upon arrival. Since site safety is the responsibility of the logistics person, this class could help that person become more familiar with the safety and issues of appropriateness for the team on a particular site. Team leaders should also understand the assessment process and be ready to work with a logistics person to evaluate a site as needed. We recommend that site assessment be done by groups of at least 2 people. It is helpful but not required if one of them has some background in spiritual and emotional care. Maybe a Stevens minister or someone with chaplain experience. This way, if you encounter a survivor who needs emotional support, one person can minister to them while the others continue assessing the property. The other benefit of multiple people is that one person can occupy the homeowner while others do the assessment. Although it is important to include the homeowners in the initial assessment, for example, it is good to have them show us the damage or to clarify what is and what isn't disaster-related damage. Their grief and emotions can sometimes be a deterrent to effective and complete assessment. Additionally, the 2-person concept helps us to ensure that we are acting in compliance with safe sanctuary guidelines as we deal with vulnerable people.
This class will use the STEP method to assess and determine if a residence is appropriate for an early response team or would be better served by a special team or one that requires professional assistance. STEP is an acronym that stands for Special Team, Early Response Team, Professional. This is the code you will enter when making an assessment. ST means that the home's damage is so unique that it will require a special team, An example of that would be large trees surrounding a property that will need chainsaws and heavy equipment to remove. E means that an average early response team can handle the work. P means the damage is so unique or extensive that it would require a professional to tackle the job. An example of that would be an uprooted septic tank, an extremely steep roof, questionable structural integrity of the home, electrical service restoration, or the presence of extreme black mold.
As we move through the material, remember that the purpose of ERT site assessment is not for making repair estimates, but rather it is to evaluate damage to help determine the ability for ERTs to work on site. Additionally, it is a way to make initial contact with a homeowner and begin to walk with them through a difficult time. Even if it is determined that the work is not appropriate for ERTs to assist, we can still provide that initial caring Christian presence to the survivors. Additionally, the data that the site assessors collect can be forwarded to those in the community who have access to others who can provide help. Before beginning any assessment work on a residence, meet the homeowners and let them know who you are, where you are from, and what you would like to do at their house. Answer their questions up front about what type of assistance the ERTs can provide, and reassure them that there is no cost for the service. Once you have established communication with the owners, ask them to sign the Access to Property form, which will give the teams permission to work on the home. As you work to gain the trust of the homeowners, remember what you learned in basic training. The 4 stages of recovery that survivors can be expected to pass through as they recover, and the 7 things to remember as you work with survivors.
Also remember that there are different types of disasters, and that different disasters cause different types of damage. While there are similarities in each, there are also unique components in each, and many disasters cause several types of damage all at once. For example, a hurricane will also spin off tornadoes and cause flooding. There are a few other things to keep in mind as you plan to assess properties. Assessors do always try to find something positive to say, but don't lie. Do be thorough but quick. Establish a system before you begin and stick to it. Do take a camera and ask permission to use it. Do ask the client what and where they think the damage is. Do listen carefully and take good notes. Assessors do not promise anything. Do not explain why something doesn't work. Do not offer advice on repair or rebuilding. Do not comment on the extent of damage. Do not do anything that causes more harm.
The following equipment will come in handy when you assess the damage to a home. This is not an all-inclusive list, but a general recommendation. ERT badge, camera, pens, pencils, clipboard, assessment forms, access to property forms, extra paper, hard hat, safety glasses, hammer, screwdrivers, flashlight, ladder, dust mask, gloves, sturdy shoes, binoculars, electrical testing device, tape measure, moisture meter, and the name and number of the assessing agency to share with the homeowner.
Next, let's look at the assessment form. The information we are collecting is very basic and mostly common knowledge. The top portion of the front page is pretty self-explanatory. This is where we collect the general information about the property and the homeowner. This is a good time to get to know the homeowner and hear their story. Take some time to discuss FEMA registration and to inquire if they have contacted their insurance company. Also note the step notation. This is where you will note your opinion. Is it in need of special team, ERT, or professionals to do the work? The lower portion of the front page is more data that will be best obtained with the assistance of the homeowner. They will be able to help you answer a lot of these questions. The rear of the form is what you will use to do your assessment of the property. Don't get too mired in the details. Remember that you are not assessing in order to rebuild the home, but rather you are primarily there to determine the feasibility of deploying an ERT to the residence. Fill in the blanks as best as you can, but don't worry about being too exact. Use the form starting at the top and document the various parts of the home. Get in the habit of following the same procedure each time, and it will become familiar fairly quickly.
The first step in assessing a home is to examine the big picture of the property. Notice the area the home is located in. Are there other homes of similar age and construction details relative to the home you are inspecting? Are the other homes in the area equally damaged? A comparison will give you a general idea of the condition of the home. Start at the exterior front of the house and work your way around the house clockwise at a distance, which allows you to view a complete face comfortably. On each face, front, sides, and rear, start your visual inspection at the top of the structure and work your way down to the ground and lot area. As an example, you would start at the front and note the roof and chimneys, the gutters, fascia, and soffits. Binoculars might be helpful in this part of the inspection, especially for multi-storied homes. Moving down, note the exterior wall coverings, brick, wood, aluminum. You would be noting windows and doors, etc. Examine any porches or decks down to the foundation, then the grade or slope of the lot area, followed by any ground coverings such as flower beds, walkways, interlocking brick, driveways, etc. Move closer to the house to examine more closely any details which may have attracted your attention without skipping any items. Having completed the front, now move to the left side of the house and start the same procedure, moving from roof to ground.
For the purpose of the assessment form, and since you will move clockwise around the property, the front of the house is denoted as side A, the left side is B, the back is C, and the right side is D. The degree of damage is rated from 1 to 5, with 1 being minor damage and 5 being major extensive damage. Looking at the exterior of this house, what do you see in regards to the roof, type of construction, windows, access to the home, lay of the yard? As you do more of this, you will begin to find yourself noting details of homes. Have your camera ready and take lots of photos. One thing to note is that if you are doing multiple assessments, determine a way to identify which photos belong to which house. One suggestion is to make your first and last photo of a particular property a photo of the assessment form with the address of the property. If you aren't familiar with building construction, don't worry. In the back of your downloaded manual on pages 16 through 18, there is a diagram and explanations of the different components of a typical house. You may want to take some time and familiarize yourself with these.
What can you tell about these houses, other than that they are damaged? Can you tell anything about the lay of the land? What about the type of construction? Looking at the form section for site inspection exterior, can you mark the electrical on the house on the left? In the damage column you would put D, and in the degree column put a 5 to denote the right side of the house and extensive damage. Since the electrical box has been ripped off this house, the code would be P, requiring professional assistance. Mobile homes present a different set of issues. What can you observe about this mobile home? Roof or window damage and skirting damage. It is in a mobile home park, so probably other homes are damaged as well. The impression in the media was that things were not so bad after the storm. That is only the case if it's not your home that was damaged. What can you tell about this example? Lots of debris work, roof damage, potential structural damage.
Roofs are a very normal job for early response teams, but they are dangerous, and you need to be thinking about the following questions. How much damage is there to the roof? How steep is the roof? The pitch or slope of a roof is the ratio of vertical distance, known as the rise, to horizontal distance, or the run. For example, if you find 4 inches of height with a tape measure at the 12-inch mark on the level, your slope is 4/12 or 4 in 12. You may also measure pitch from the ground with a carpenter's square and tape measure. How high off the ground is the roof? A 1-story house, a 2-story, split level, or other? Does the yard slope away, making it seem even higher? What is the roof composition? Shingles, metal, slate, tile, or something else? What is the best way to safely get on and off of the roof? What type of equipment will you need for this job? Ladders, safety harnesses, or something else? What can you tell about this roof? What's the pitch? What is the composition? What is the height from the ground? Are there potential safety issues? Metal roofs pose a different set of challenges for ERTs. What can you tell about a metal roof from this picture? It is smooth and probably slippery. It has a low pitch. Not all roofs are simple construction. Note the angles and pitches on this roof. There are multiple gables and porches. There are also trees and wires close by. The roof on the right is a hipped roof. Note the lack of gables. Hipped roofs tend to withstand the wind better. There are no gables to catch the wind. Covering metal roofs presents a specific set of challenges, but are definitely possible for an ERT. In the roof section on the form, how would you document this? It is a metal roof. The damage appears to be on side C, or the backyard. The extent of damages may be a 2, and it looks to be confined to one corner. The code in this case is E, as a regular ERT could tackle this job, since it is low on a roof that isn't very steep. So your documentation would look like this.
Let's move on to foundations. Some initial questions to consider are: what type of foundation is it? Slab, pier and beam, concrete block, mobile, etc. Is the home still lined up properly over the foundation? What might cause it to shift? Was there pre-existing damage? Can I evaluate the structural integrity safely? What might be under a house following a storm? This is a common foundation found on older homes. The home was built on pillars or pier and beam, and the space between the piers was later filled in and used as living space. A site assessor would need to pay close attention to any damage that might have occurred to those pillars. A more modern block or brick foundation is sturdier, but may mean crawling under a house to check for stability and floor joist damage. This is a good cinder block foundation that looks to be intact, but the mobile home was lifted off of it. This is definitely a job for professionals. Looking at your assessment form, how would you mark the overall condition of this home? On this one, the foundation is pier and beam with damage level 5. The roof appears to be undamaged from here, but access to the house is questionable, and this is probably a job for professionals. Here's how to document it.
Using your form, think about how you would mark the damage to the outside of this house. Under site, you would probably mark overall damage as 5. Electrical, gas, and septic are unknown. Debris A5 denotes side A, damage level 5, side D, level 5, sidewalks and yard A5, roof ACD5. Sometimes it is obvious that the damage is beyond the capabilities of volunteers. Although the roof damage will certainly require professionals to repair it, remember that we are assessing for response, and ERTs may be able to safely tarp the openings. We are still on the outside of the home and have yet to assess exterior walls, windows, and entry doors. As you look at the house, take note of screened rooms, window breakage, blockages that might impede access. Also look at the composition of walls, whether it is brick, block, siding, wood, or stucco. Make note of anything that may be unsafe for the team, as well as the stability of the building itself. We often talk about tarping damaged roofs, but sometimes there are other openings as well. These bring their own issues. If this is the front of the house, how would you designate damage? Walls are brick or stone. Side A, level 3. Window A3 is missing, but coded for ERTs to cover.
On the interior, begin your inspection in the basement, and then follow a system throughout each floor in the house. The system for inspecting the interior is to begin with the floor, go to the walls, and then the ceiling, and then consider any appliances or other items in the room. Move from room to room, always in the same direction, clockwise or counterclockwise, so as not to miss any areas. If you see a door, open it. If there is a utility room in the basement, first notice the floor, the walls, possibly the foundation walls are visible here, then the ceiling, floor joists may be visible, then go to the furnace, water heater, electrical panel, plumbing system, etc. When inspecting the floors, walls, and ceilings, scan the entire area that is visible, not just one section. In a finished room, you would notice the floors, walls, including the windows, and ceiling. Next, look for the heat sources, electrical outlets and switches, fireplaces, closets, etc. In bathroom or kitchen, notice the floor, walls, and ceiling, then the plumbing fixtures. A good way to note the height of the water level in flooded homes is with your camera. An even better way is to have someone hold a tape measure as you snap the photo. Annotate all of these things in the appropriate spaces on the assessment form. Is there evidence of mold? You can usually smell mold or see spots on the walls or ceiling. For walls that have mold, remember that the mold may be higher than the water level was. Look specifically for it. Some homes will be more challenging to inspect than others. Remember to go through it systematically so that you don't miss anything. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, HVAC. Determine where the heating, air conditioning system is located. If in a flooded home, what was the water level? And was the system underwater? Where is the ductwork? Was the ductwork underwater? Annotate these accordingly and note the presence of mold.
Every community will handle debris differently, but in many locations debris is separated into different piles depending on its impact on the environment. Remember from your basic training the 6 types of piles? Before assigning a team a debris removal task, check with the local authorities about the requirements in that local community or for that disaster response. This is good information to add on the assessment form, especially if you find yourself assessing in a number of different communities with different regulations. Keeping in mind that you will probably be assessing damage very early in the process, remember that you will be seeing survivors at their worst. They may be in shock and will be struggling with getting their mind around what to do and where to go. Help them out by ensuring that they have contacted their insurance company and FEMA if FEMA is in the community. Yes, the assessment is important, but so is being a caring Christian presence to the survivors at a very difficult time. Take time to help them and don't be in a hurry to depart if they need a shoulder to cry on. Encourage them to take photos throughout their home. This may be a good thing for you to do with them if you have time.
The assessment is done. Now what? Disposition of forms, all forms, assessment, property access, participant liability, etc., need to be forwarded to either the on-site coordinator or the conference disaster response coordinator. Even if you are self-assessing for your own team, it is recommended that you make copies just in case the originals are lost. This is a disaster after all. There are some great phone apps available to snap a photo and create a PDF document. These can be used for making copies, even to share with the homeowner. A couple of common ones are iScanner and CamScanner. Even if you are doing your own assessment, we need to make sure that the conference gets the original signed forms for reporting and archiving. Remember to take one final photo of your forms to signal the end of one house before going on to the next.
Before we finish, we do need to introduce you to Crisis Cleanup. Crisis Cleanup is an online app that is quickly becoming the preferred way the disaster recovery is coordinated across different agencies. As an assessor, you may find yourself working to do assessments in a community that is capturing all of their data using this tool. After watching this brief intro, we encourage you to go to crisiscleanup.org and learn more.
If you've ever played soccer, imagine trying to score a goal as a team with boxes over your heads. Unfortunately, that's how disaster recovery works now. After a disaster, hundreds of organizations converge on the field to clean up. Although each organization is working towards the same goal, they don't communicate, coordinate, or work together easily. They can't see what their teammates are doing, even though they might literally be working side by side. Sometimes they duplicate efforts, and nobody can see the entire field at once.
That's why we created crisiscleanup.org. Crisis Cleanup takes the box off your head, allowing relief organizations to see the entire game and work together with teammates. Crisis Cleanup is a new way of coordinating disaster recovery efforts, using the collaborative power of the internet to break down barriers among recovery organizations.
And we need you to be a part of the game. By donating to Crisis Cleanup, you will be helping literally thousands of families in cities across the country and across the world by facilitating unprecedented coordination among organizations like UMCOR, the United Way, Catholic Charities, the United Methodists, Islamic Relief, Mormon Helping Hands, Nahama, 211 operators, and many others.
Here's how it has worked in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Mississippi, and Georgia. After hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, fires, and earthquakes, volunteers from churches, synagogues, hotlines like 211, and other community organizations organize to help those in need.
Even after phone lines and the internet come back online, coordinating after a disaster is challenging. Volunteers arrive on the scene, but need to know who needs help. Devastated neighborhoods are often overwhelmed by the damage, even as thousands of volunteers sit idle waiting for direction. The lists of people who need help often don't end up in the hands of the waiting volunteers. CrisisCleanup.org connects relief organizations with the people who need help by taking a Craigslist approach to disaster recovery.
Organizations that are aware of a need enter the information in the system. Then organizations with capacity help as soon as they can. When everyone uses the system, tens of thousands of volunteers from hundreds of organizations go straight to work, and each organization knows where the others are working. Crisis Cleanup makes coordination and communication seamless, while giving voluntary organizations maximum flexibility to respond as they see fit.
Individuals needing assistance will often call as many organizations as possible in the hope that they'll receive help faster. While we can't blame them, this causes inefficiency and duplication of efforts when 2 or more organizations show up at the same house. But with crisis cleanup, if a person calls in twice, even to different organizations, the system will find the existing record and avoid duplicating efforts.
After a disaster, volunteers from dozens of organizations canvass neighborhoods to assess needs, but don't coordinate with one another. Without coordination, some streets are canvassed dozens of times, while other streets are ignored. But now, with crisis cleanup, volunteers will be able to see which streets have been canvassed in real time, allowing them to focus on areas that have not been assessed.
Any local or national recovery organization can use crisis cleanup. 211 can perform an assessment over the phone and enter the information into the system. Relief organization volunteers can use a smartphone or tablet to report people who need help. Citizens will be able to report damage using just a touch-tone phone, sharing vital information with community leaders and relief agencies across the region, even as the disaster is unfolding.
Crisis Cleanup is open source. Relief organizations may join Crisis Cleanup for free if they meet 3 requirements. First, your organization must have a physical presence in the area. Second, it must do this type of work, including canvassing, assessments, muckouts, or rebuilding. Third, it must be a nonprofit member of VOAD, a government agency, or come recommended by a VOAD or government agency.
Crisis Cleanup has already helped more than 100 organizations send more than 30,000 volunteers to more than 6,000 families in 5 states during 4 separate disasters.
This completes the ERT Site Assessment course. With the contact information that you provided upon registration, your name will be added to the list of trained ERT site assessors for the Rio Texas Conference, and you will be contacted whenever the need arises for assessment in the future. There are no additional steps that you need to take at this time, but we encourage you to look through the downloaded material and familiarize yourself with it. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact the Rio Texas Conference Disaster Response Training Coordinator at the email address on the screen. Thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity.